I was staring at the love letter in my hand when Hazel's paintbrush accidentally smeared cobalt blue across my knuckles, and I realized three things at once. 1. I was definitely blushing. 2. She definitely noticed. And 3. I was absolutely screwed because the anonymous love letter I'd been obsessing over for 2 weeks had a tiny blue fingerprint in the corner that matched the paint now on my hand. Welcome back to Daydream BL and GL. Thanks for the gifts, likes, comments, and subscription. Now if you haven't subscribed, please do and comment where you are watching from. Love ya. Let me back up because this whole mess started exactly 17 days ago when I opened my locker and a cream-colored envelope fell out with my name written in the most beautiful handwriting I'd ever seen. Inside was a sketch of me sitting in the library, headphones on, completely lost in whatever I was reading. Underneath it said, "You bite your lip when you're concentrating, and it's the cutest thing I've ever seen." The letter wasn't signed. No name, no hints, just this raw confession that made my heart do gymnastics in my chest. I'm Ivy, by the way, and before you start thinking I'm some romantic who believes in fate and soulmates, let me stop you right there. My parents got divorced when I was 12 after my mom found out my dad had been lying about everything from his job to where he spent his weekends. I learned pretty early that people who seem perfect are usually just better liars. So when I found that first letter, my immediate thought wasn't, oh my god, true love, it was who's messing with me and why. But then the letters kept coming. One every few days, each more personal than the last. Whoever was writing them knew things about me that I didn't advertise. They knew I always ordered the same coffee, a vanilla oat milk latte with extra foam. They knew I reorganized the poetry section at the library because whoever shelved them kept putting Rupee Kaur in the wrong spot. They knew that I'd worn my lucky green hoodie to every single debate tournament since sophomore year, even though it had a hole in the left pocket that I kept meaning to sew up but never did. The sketches got better too. More detailed. There was one of my hands wrapped around my coffee cup, another of my beat-up Converse with the star I'd drawn on the rubber toe. Each drawing was signed with a tiny heart in the bottom right corner, nothing else. I'm not going to lie, I was obsessed. I started a whole investigation board in my room, red string and everything, trying to figure out who my secret admirer was. And I had it narrowed down to 3 suspects. Suspect number 1, Hazel Martinez, my art class partner. Quiet, observant, always had paint somewhere on her body, whether it was her hands, her jeans, or that one time, mysteriously, behind her ear. We'd been partnered up for our senior thesis project and spent hours together in the art room, mostly in comfortable silence, while she painted and I worked on my digital designs. She noticed everything, remembered everything, and had this way of looking at me sometimes that made me forget how to breathe properly. Suspect number 2, Charlie Brooks, who sat behind me in AP Literature and had been making me laugh since freshman year. She was the kind of person who could turn anything into a joke, but her creative writing was actually incredible. Like, make you cry in the middle of class, incredible. She passed me funny drawings during boring lectures, and her handwriting was this chaotic scrawl that somehow still managed to be endearing. We'd stayed up until 3 in the morning more than once, texting about books and life and absolutely nothing at all. Suspect number 3, Blair, the new girl who'd transferred to our school 6 weeks ago and immediately started working at Common Grounds, the coffee shop I went to every single morning. She was mysterious in that attractive way where you couldn't tell if she was being aloof or just didn't care what people thought. She always knew my order before I said it, and she had this habit of leaving little drawings on my cup, nothing fancy, just doodles of stars or flowers. She seemed to know weird, specific things about me that I couldn't remember telling her. So yeah, 3 suspects, all of them way out of my league, all of them making my gay disaster heart work overtime. The thing is, I wasn't just passively waiting around for my secret admirer to reveal themselves. I run this anonymous advice blog called Ask Ivy Anything where students from school submit their problems and I give them advice. It started as a joke sophomore year, but somehow turned into this whole thing where I had like 3,000 followers and people actually waited for my posts. And for the past 2 weeks, someone had been submitting questions that felt really familiar. Stuff like, what do you do when you're terrified the person you like will think you're creepy for how you're trying to show them you care? And is it possible to admire someone so much that you can't find the words to just tell them directly? And my personal favorite, what if the way I love people is too intense and I scare them away before they even know it's me? I'd been giving this person advice, really good advice actually, telling them to be brave and honest and that the right person would appreciate their sincerity. Meanwhile, I was literally conducting a 3-suspect investigation like I was in a crime procedural instead of just, I don't know, appreciating the romance of it all. Peyton, my best friend since middle school, thought I was being ridiculous. We were sitting in her car last Tuesday, splitting cheese fries from the diner, when she finally staged an intervention. "You're overthinking this," she said, stealing 3 fries at once, which was frankly excessive. "Someone likes you enough to write you poetry and draw you pictures. Why does it matter who it is? Just enjoy it. Because what if it's a prank?" I said. "What if I get invested and it turns out to be someone making fun of me?" Peyton gave me that look, the one that meant she was about to say something that would make me uncomfortable because it was true. "Ivy, literally nobody at school thinks about you enough to pull an elaborate prank. You're not on anyone's radar like that. This is real. Gee, thanks for that self-esteem boost. You know what I mean. You're not drama. You're not a target. Someone genuinely likes you and you're trying to Nancy Drew your way out of accepting it." She had a point, but I wasn't ready to admit it. So I changed the subject and we argued about whether the new season of our favorite show was queerbaiting or actual representation, and I thought I'd successfully distracted her. I should have known better. Peyton was like a dog with a bone when she decided something needed to happen. Which brings me to today, standing in the art room with Hazel's paint on my hand and a love letter in my other hand, having what could only be described as a catastrophic revelation. "Sorry," Hazel said, grabbing a paper towel and gently wiping the paint off my fingers. Her touch was so careful it made my stomach flip. I wasn't paying attention. "It's fine," I managed to say, even though my brain was currently short-circuiting because there was blue paint on this letter. Blue paint. And Hazel always had blue paint on her hands because it was her favorite color to work with. I looked down at the letter, at the tiny fingerprint I'd never really examined closely before, and then at Hazel's paint-stained fingers, and the connection hit me like a freight train. But wait. The letters were beautifully written, almost calligraphy. Hazel's handwriting was a chicken-scratch nightmare. I'd seen her write notes in class, and it looked like a seismograph during an earthquake. So maybe the paint thing was a coincidence? "You okay?" Hazel asked, and I realized I'd been staring at her hands for a weirdly long time. "Yeah, totally, I'm great, super normal," I said, which was definitely the response of someone who was being cool and casual about things. Hazel smiled, that soft smile that made her eyes crinkle at the corners, and went back to her painting. I stood there like an idiot, holding this letter, trying to figure out if I'd just discovered my secret admirer, or if I was seeing patterns where there were none because I wanted it to be her. Before I could spiral further, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from my advice blog. New submission. I shouldn't have checked it right then. I was supposed to be working on my project. But impulse control has never been my strong suit, so I opened it. The message made my heart stop. I think she's starting to figure it out and I'm panicking. What do I do? Do I tell her before she guesses? Do I let her solve the mystery? What if she's disappointed when she knows it's me? I read it 3 times. Then I looked at Hazel, who was completely absorbed in her painting, and my brain started doing calculations. The timeline matched. The panic matched. The whole thing matched. "Holy shit," I whispered. "What?" Hazel looked up concerned. "Nothing, just, my friend is having a crisis," I said, holding up my phone like that explained anything. This was the moment. I could just ask her. I could say, "Hey, weird question, but are you leaving me love letters?" And we could have a conversation like normal people. Instead, I said I need to go to the bathroom and practically ran out of the art room like it was on fire. Peyton found me hyperventilating in the hallway 10 minutes later. She took one look at my face and said, "What happened? Did someone die?" I think Hazel might be my secret admirer. And that's bad because? I don't know. It's not bad, it's terrifying. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm right? What if I ask her and she laughs at me? Peyton grabbed my shoulders. "Ivy, breathe. You're spiraling. She was right. I was spiraling. I did my breathing exercises, the ones my therapist taught me, and tried to organize my thoughts into something resembling logic. Okay, Peyton said. Let's think about this. What evidence do you have? The blue paint, I said. There's a fingerprint on one of the letters, and it's the exact same shade she always uses. Could be coincidence. She knows all these specific things about me, and we spend a ton of time together. So do I, and I'm not writing you love letters, Peyton said. What else? Someone's been submitting to my advice blog asking for help with confessing feelings, and the timing matches up with when I started getting the letters. Okay, that's pretty solid. But her handwriting is terrible and the letters are gorgeous. Peyton thought about this. What if she's getting someone to help her? Like, she does the sketches and someone else does the writing? My brain immediately went to Charlie, who had beautiful handwriting and wrote poetry that could make you feel things you didn't know you had words for. Charlie and Hazel were friends. They sat together at lunch sometimes. Charlie was in the art club that Hazel ran. Oh my God, I said slowly. What if it's both of them? Peyton's eyes went wide. Like, together? Like they're collaborating. Hazel does the art, Charlie does the writing. That's either really romantic or really complicated. It's both, I said. It's definitely both. The bell rang and we had to get to class, but my mind was racing through every interaction I'd had with both Hazel and Charlie over the past few weeks. The way Charlie had been weird and quiet lately, not her usual jokey self. The way Hazel kept looking at me and then looking away like she'd been caught at something. The way they'd both been hovering around my locker at odd times. If I was right, if they were working together, then what? Were they both interested in me? Was one of them helping the other? What was the endgame here? I needed more information. I needed to be sure before I did anything. Because if I confronted them and I was wrong, I'd ruin whatever friendships I had with both of them. And if I was right, well, I'd have to figure out what the hell to do with that information. So I did what any rational person would do. I decided to set a trap. That night, I posted on my advice blog, to the person who's been asking about confessing their feelings, I think the person you like might be starting to suspect. Maybe it's time to make a move before they guess wrong and think it's someone else. Life's too short to hide behind anonymity forever. Take the leap. Then I waited. The next morning, I got to school early and positioned myself near my locker, but not too close, like I was casually hanging out in the hallway for no reason. Peyton was with me, pretending to look at her phone but actually watching the hallway like a hawk. This is ridiculous, she muttered. We look like we're on a stakeout. We are on a stakeout. For a love letter. We're on a stakeout for a love letter. Do you hear how insane that sounds? Before I could respond, I saw Hazel coming down the hallway. She was holding something, an envelope, and she was walking toward my locker with purpose. Oh my God, it's happening, I whispered. But then Charlie appeared from the other direction, also holding an envelope, also heading for my locker. They both stopped when they saw each other. There was this moment, this brief second where they just stared at each other, and I could see the exact moment they both realized what was happening. Are you? Charlie started. Were you? Hazel said at the same time. They both looked at the envelopes in each other's hands. Then they both looked at my locker. Then they looked at each other again. How long? Charlie asked quietly. Since we started the project together, Hazel said. You? Since she corrected my poetry analysis in class and didn't make me feel stupid about getting it wrong. Oh my God, I breathed. Peyton grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. This is better than any TV show, she whispered. We should talk, Hazel said. Yeah, Charlie agreed. We really should. They walked away together, both still holding their envelopes, and I just stood there trying to process what I'd just witnessed. So they both like you, Peyton said. Independently. And they were both leaving you letters. But the letters were collaborative, I said. The art and the writing. They had to have been working together at some point. Maybe they started separately and then figured out they were both doing it? Peyton suggested. And decided to team up? That's insane. That's romantic. That's complicated. Peyton grinned. That's your life now. Congrats. I spent the entire day in a daze. I couldn't focus in any of my classes. I kept checking my advice blog to see if either of them had submitted anything new, but there was nothing. Radio silence. At lunch, I couldn't find either Hazel or Charlie anywhere. They weren't in the cafeteria, they weren't in the art room, they weren't in any of their usual spots. It was like they'd both vanished. Peyton tried to keep me calm. They're probably just talking, she said. Figuring things out. Give them space. But what if they decide to just give up? I said. What if they think it's too messy and they both just walk away? Then you go after them and tell them how you feel. I don't even know how I feel. Peyton gave me that look again. Ivy. Yes, you do. She was right. I did know. I'd been falling for both of them in different ways for weeks now. Hazel with her quiet intensity and the way she saw beauty in everything. Charlie with her humor and depth and the way she could make me feel seen with just a few words. The letters had made me fall for both of them without even knowing it. But you can't date two people. That's not how this works. I was going to have to choose, and the thought of hurting either of them made me feel sick. After school, I went to Common Grounds to get coffee and try to organize my thoughts. Blair was working, and she gave me a weird look when I walked in. You look stressed, she said, already making my usual order without me having to ask. Complicated day, I said. She slid my coffee across the counter, and I noticed she'd drawn a little heart on the cup. She always drew something, but it was usually stars or flowers. A heart felt significant. Blair, I said slowly. Can I ask you something? Sure. Have you been leaving me letters? She blinked at me. What? No. Why would you think that? You know my order, you're always drawing things, you seem to know stuff about me. Blair laughed, but it wasn't mean. It was actually kind of fond. Ivy, I know your order because you've been coming here every morning for 3 months and ordering the same thing. I draw on cups because I'm bored. And I know stuff about you because you talk to yourself while you wait for your coffee. Oh, I said, feeling my face heat up. So you're not secretly in love with me? Not secretly, not at all, Blair said cheerfully. You seem great, but you're not my type. Plus, I've been dating someone from my old school for like a year. Right, cool. That makes sense, I said, wanting to disappear into the floor. But whoever is leaving you letters is lucky, Blair added. You're a catch. I took my coffee and basically fled, my embarrassment complete. So Blair was officially off the suspect list, which meant it really was just Hazel and Charlie, who were both currently MIA and probably having some intense conversation about the fact that they'd both been pursuing the same girl. I went home and tried to do homework, but I couldn't concentrate. I kept checking my phone, waiting for a text or a call or literally anything from either of them. Instead, at 9:30, I got a notification from my advice blog. New submission. My hands were shaking as I opened it. We need to tell her the truth. Both of us. Together. Tomorrow. Are you okay with that? And then, a minute later, another submission from a different user. Yeah. It's time. She deserves to know everything. I stared at my phone, my heart racing. They were going to tell me. Tomorrow. Both of them. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt like I was about to throw up. I called Peyton. Emergency, I said when she picked up. They're going to tell me tomorrow. Both of them. Together. Okay, Peyton said calmly. What are you going to say? I don't know. That's why I'm calling you. What do you want to happen? I started, and then stopped. What did I want? I wanted the letters to keep coming. I wanted to keep falling asleep reading them and waking up excited to see what came next. I wanted the version of this where I didn't have to choose, where I didn't have to hurt anyone, where everything was simple and romantic and easy. But life wasn't simple. Life was messy and complicated, and sometimes you had to make hard choices. I want to be honest with them, I said finally. I want to tell them that I've been falling for both of them, and I don't know what to do about that. So tell them that. But what if they hate me for it? Ivy, Peyton said gently. They've both been falling for you too. They're in the same position you are. Maybe you're all just scared of the same thing. I hadn't thought about it like that. Maybe they were just as confused and terrified as I was. Maybe this didn't have to be some big dramatic thing where someone got hurt. Maybe we could just be honest and figure it out together. I spent the entire night trying to figure out what I was going to say. I wrote out scripts and deleted them. I practiced in the mirror and hated every version. I tried on 7 different outfits before settling on my lucky green hoodie because if I was going to have a potentially life-changing conversation, I wanted to at least feel like myself. The next morning, I got to school early. Hazel and Charlie were already waiting by my locker, standing close together, both looking nervous. "Hi," I said, because my brain apparently forgot how to form complex sentences. "Hi," they both said at the same time and then laughed awkwardly. "We need to talk," Hazel said. "Yeah, I kind of figured. Can we go somewhere private?" Charlie asked. We ended up in the art room, which was empty because it was barely 7:30 and no one in their right mind was at school this early except apparently the three of us. Hazel and Charlie sat next to each other on the paint-stained couch, and I sat across from them on a stool, feeling like I was about to be interrogated. So, Charlie started, and then stopped. "This is harder than I thought it would be. We've been leaving you letters," Hazel said, just ripping the band-aid off. "Both of us. Together." "I know," I said. They both looked shocked. "You know? Blue paint fingerprint," I said, pointing at Hazel. "And the handwriting matched Charlie's poetry portfolio that you left out in lit class that one time." "Okay, we're apparently terrible at being anonymous," Charlie said. "How long have you known?" Hazel asked. "Like 2 days," I admitted. "I saw you both heading for my locker yesterday morning." "Right," Charlie said. That was awkward. There was a pause. Nobody seemed to know what to say next. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "How did this even start? Like, were you working together from the beginning or—" "No," Hazel said quickly. "We both started separately. I was leaving sketches, Charlie was leaving notes. We didn't know about each other until about a week ago when we literally ran into each other both trying to put letters in your locker at the same time. It was the most ridiculous moment of my life," Charlie added. "We both just stood there holding our envelopes like idiots. And then we talked," Hazel continued. "And we realized we were both falling for you. And we didn't know what to do about it. So we decided to collaborate," Charlie said. "Combine our letters. Make them better. We thought maybe if we worked together, at least one of us might have a chance, and whoever you chose, the other would be okay with it because we'd rather see you happy than compete with each other." I started, and my voice cracked. "That's actually really sweet and also completely insane." "Yeah, we're aware," Hazel said with a small smile. "So now what?" I asked. "You're both here to tell me I have to choose?" They looked at each other, some kind of silent communication happening between them. "We talked about that," Charlie said. "A lot. And we both agreed that we don't want to put you in that position." "We know this is weird," Hazel added. "We know it's not a normal situation. But we also think that maybe normal is overrated." "What are you saying?" I asked, my heart starting to race. "We're saying that we're both interested in you," Charlie said carefully. "And we're both okay with seeing where this goes. All three of us. If you want to." I stared at them. "You mean like, all of us dating? Together?" "If you're open to it," Hazel said. "We've been talking about it, and we think we could make it work. We already get along really well, and we both care about you, and we'd rather try something unconventional than lose you entirely." My brain was short-circuiting. This wasn't how I thought this conversation was going to go. I'd been prepared for heartbreak and difficult choices and someone getting hurt. I hadn't been prepared for them to suggest we all just date each other. "I need to think about this," I said. "Of course," Charlie said quickly. "Take all the time you need. We're not trying to pressure you. We just wanted you to know that it's an option," Hazel added. "If you want it to be." I nodded, still processing. They both stood up to leave, and Charlie paused at the door. "For what it's worth," she said. "The letters were real. Everything we wrote, everything we drew, all of it was real. We both think you're incredible, Ivy." After they left, I sat in the art room for a long time, just thinking. This was insane. This wasn't how relationships worked. You didn't just date two people at once. That was something that happened in books or TV shows, not real life. But then again, why not? Who made the rules about what relationships were supposed to look like? My parents had followed all the traditional rules, and their marriage had still fallen apart. Maybe conventional wasn't better, just more common. I pulled out my phone and texted Peyton. They want to all date each other. All three of us. Together. What do I do? Her response was immediate. Do it. Live your best poly life. I'm living vicariously through you. And then, but actually, do what feels right for you. Not what you think you're supposed to do. That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? I thought about Hazel, quiet and observant and talented, who noticed everything about me and made me feel seen. I thought about Charlie, funny and deep and genuine, who made me laugh and made me think. I thought about the letters, the combination of art and words that had made me feel more alive than I'd felt in years. I thought about choosing between them and immediately felt wrong about it. Like picking one meant losing the other, and I didn't want to lose either of them. Maybe that was my answer. I spent the rest of the day in a daze. I saw both Hazel and Charlie in the hallway between classes, and we all did this awkward wave thing that was probably visible from space. Everyone else must have thought we'd all lost our minds. At lunch, Peyton cornered me. "So, what are you thinking?" "I think I want to try it," I said. "Is that crazy?" "Probably," Peyton said cheerfully. "But so what? When has being normal ever made anyone happy? What if it doesn't work? What if we try and it's a disaster and I lose both of them? What if you don't try and spend the rest of your life wondering what if?" She had a point. After school, I went back to the art room where I knew Hazel would be working on her thesis project. She looked up when I came in, and I could see the hope and fear warring on her face. "I want to try," I said without preamble. "The three of us. I want to see if it can work." Hazel's face broke into the biggest smile I'd ever seen on her. Yeah, but I have conditions. We have to communicate about everything. We have to be honest even when it's hard. And if at any point this stops working for any of us, we talk about it. No suffering in silence. "Deal," Hazel said immediately. "Where's Charlie?" I asked. "Library." Hazel pulled out her phone. "I'll text her." 10 minutes later, Charlie burst into the art room, slightly out of breath. "Is it true? You want to do this?" "I want to try," I said. "No promises it'll work, but I want to try." Charlie let out a whoop and then immediately looked embarrassed. "Sorry, that was loud. I'm just really happy." We spent the next hour just talking, figuring out what this would look like. We agreed to take things slow, to figure out boundaries as we went, to be patient with each other and ourselves. It felt weird and scary and exciting all at once. "So what now?" I asked eventually. "Now," Charlie said with a grin, "we take you on a proper date. Both of us." Our first official date was that Saturday. They picked me up together, Charlie driving her beat-up Honda with Hazel in the passenger seat. I climbed in the back and immediately felt awkward. "This is weird, right?" I said. "This feels weird." "Super weird," Charlie agreed. "Incredibly weird," Hazel added. "Okay, good," I said. Just wanted to make sure it wasn't just me. And then we all started laughing and the tension broke, and it felt a little less weird. They took me to this tiny art gallery I'd never heard of, the kind of place that only locals knew about. We wandered through the exhibits, and Hazel explained the techniques, and Charlie made up increasingly ridiculous stories about what each painting was really depicting. I couldn't stop smiling. After the gallery, we got pizza at this hole-in-the-wall place that had the best slices I'd ever tasted. We sat in a booth, me in the middle, and talked about everything and nothing. It felt easy. Natural. Like we'd been doing this forever instead of for 3 hours. "Can I ask you something?" I said as we were finishing up. "Why me?" "Like, you're both amazing and you could probably have anyone you wanted. Why did you both fall for the girl who runs an anonymous advice blog and has a collection of hoodies with holes in them?" Charlie and Hazel looked at each other, and then Hazel said, "You're going to think this is cheesy." "I already think you're both cheesy," I said. The love letters kind of gave it away. "Fair point," Charlie said. "Okay, for me, it was the day you defended that freshman who was getting picked on in the cafeteria. You didn't know I was watching, but you just walked right up to those seniors and told them to back off, and you didn't even hesitate. You were terrified, I could tell, but you did it anyway because it was the right thing to do. For me," Hazel said quietly, "it was when you stayed late in the art room to help me fix my sculpture after I dropped it. You didn't know anything about sculpture, but you stayed for 3 hours anyway, handing me tools and making jokes to keep my spirits up. Most people would have just left, but you stayed." I felt my eyes getting wet and blinked rapidly. "Okay, you're right, that was cheesy. But it worked," Charlie said, grinning. "Yeah," I admitted. "It really did." Walking back to the car, Charlie grabbed my hand. A second later, Hazel grabbed my other hand. We walked like that, the three of us connected, and I felt something settle in my chest. Something that felt like rightness. The next few weeks were a learning curve. We had to figure out how to navigate being together in school, where people definitely noticed and had opinions. Some people were supportive, some people were confused, and some people were outright rude about it. The first time someone made a snide comment in the hallway about us, I felt Charlie tense up beside me. But before either of us could respond, Hazel stepped forward and said, in the calmest voice I'd ever heard, "If you have something to say about our relationship, you can say it to my face. Otherwise, move along." The girl who'd made the comment actually backed up a step and then scurried away. Charlie and I just stared at Hazel. "That was hot," Charlie said. "Agreed," I added. Hazel turned pink but smiled. We also had to figure out logistics. How did dates work with 3 people? How did we make sure everyone felt included? What about when 2 of us wanted to do something and the third didn't? We created a group chat called the Love Triangle, which Charlie insisted was ironic and hilarious even though Hazel and I both groaned at the name. We used it to plan things, to check in, to send each other memes and updates throughout the day. Sometimes we all hung out together. Sometimes it was just 2 of us while the third had other plans. We figured out that we didn't always have to be a unit of 3, that we could have individual relationships with each other, and that was okay too. I went to Hazel's art show and watched her face light up when her piece won 2nd place. Charlie and I were screaming so loud that we got shushed by 3 different people. Later, Hazel cried happy tears and kissed both of us and said she couldn't have done it without our support. I went to Charlie's poetry reading and listened to her perform a piece she'd written about taking chances and being brave. She looked at me when she read the last line. "I'd rather risk everything for something real than play it safe with nothing at all," and I knew she was talking about us. They both came to my debate tournament and made signs that said, "Ivy's going to destroy you," but with facts and logic. We didn't win, but having them there made losing feel a lot less important. There were hard moments too. Times when jealousy crept in, when someone felt left out, when we had to have difficult conversations about boundaries and needs and feelings. But we talked through all of it. We were honest, sometimes painfully so, and we worked through the rough patches together. About 2 months in, we had our first real fight. I'd made plans with Hazel without checking with Charlie first, and Charlie felt excluded and hurt. It turned into this whole thing where everyone was crying and saying things they didn't mean, and I was convinced we were going to break up. But then Hazel said, "Stop. We need to pause and actually listen to each other instead of just reacting." So we did. We all took a breath, and then we went around and said how we were feeling without interrupting each other. Charlie explained that she'd been feeling insecure about her place in the relationship. Hazel admitted she'd been monopolizing my time because she was worried about not being enough. I confessed that I'd been so focused on making sure they were both happy that I'd forgotten to check in about what I needed. It was messy and hard, but we got through it. And on the other side of it, we understood each other better. We made rules about communication, about checking in, about being honest even when it was uncomfortable. That night, lying in bed, I got a text in our group chat from Charlie. "I'm sorry for freaking out earlier. I love you both, and I'm still figuring out how to do this without letting my insecurities take over." Hazel responded, "I'm sorry too. I love you both and I promise to be better about communicating my needs." And then they were both waiting for me to respond, so I typed, "I love you both too. We're all still learning." That's okay. It was the first time any of us had said "I love you," even in text form. My heart was racing as I hit send. Charlie's response was immediate. "Wait, did we just have our first I love yous in a group chat?" Hazel, "That's very on brand for us, honestly." Me, "We're disasters, but we're disasters together." Charlie, "I wouldn't want it any other way." Prom came around, and we had to figure out how that was going to work. Charlie wanted to go all out with matching outfits. Hazel wanted to skip it entirely and do our own thing. I was somewhere in the middle, wanting the experience, but not wanting to deal with everyone's stares and comments. We compromised. We went to prom, but we showed up late and left early. Charlie wore a suit, Hazel wore a dress, and I wore a jumpsuit that made me feel like I could take on the world. We took pictures together, all 3 of us, and I didn't care that people were staring. We danced together, rotating partners, sometimes all dancing in a little circle of three. When a slow song came on, Hazel and Charlie both offered to sit it out, but I grabbed both their hands and said, "We're making this work." So we did this awkward three-person slow dance that probably looked ridiculous, but it felt perfect. After we left prom, we went back to Hazel's house where her parents had set up her basement for us with snacks and movies and blankets. Her parents were incredible, by the way. When Hazel had told them about us, they'd just said, "As long as you're all happy and treating each other well, we support you." We spent the rest of the night watching bad movies and eating too much junk food and just being together. Charlie fell asleep first, her head on my shoulder. Then Hazel dozed off with her head in my lap. I stayed awake a little longer, looking at both of them and thought about how lucky I was. This wasn't the story I'd expected. When I found that first love letter, I never imagined it would lead here, to this unconventional, complicated, beautiful thing we'd built together. But it was my story. Ours. Senior year ended, and we all got into colleges. Different colleges, because of course life couldn't make it easy. Charlie was going to NYU for creative writing, Hazel got into RISD for art, and I was headed to Berkeley for political science. We had a lot of hard conversations about what this meant for us. Long distance was hard enough with 2 people. With 3 people in 3 different cities, it felt impossible. "Maybe we should break up," I said one night when we were all together in Charlie's car, parked at our spot overlooking the city. It seemed like the logical thing to say, even though saying it made me feel like my heart was being ripped out. "No," Charlie said immediately. "Absolutely not," Hazel agreed. "But how is this going to work?" I asked. Charlie turned around from the driver's seat to look at me. "Ivy, we've literally been defying how things are supposed to work since day one. Why stop now?" "We'll figure it out," Hazel said. "We'll visit each other, we'll video call, we'll make it work because we want to make it work." "It's going to be hard," I said. "Most things worth having are hard," Charlie pointed out. "So we decided to try. Because that's what we did. We tried, even when it was scary, even when it was hard, even when it would have been easier to give up." The summer before college, we spent as much time together as possible. We went on road trips and had picnics and stayed up late talking about everything and nothing. We made memories we could hold on to when we were apart. The day we all left for college was brutal. We had this big goodbye at the airport where we were all trying not to cry and failing miserably. Other people were definitely staring, but we didn't care. "I love you both," I said. "This isn't goodbye, it's just see you later." "See you at Thanksgiving," Charlie said. "Call me when you land," Hazel added. We had one last group hug, the 3 of us holding on to each other like we could stop time if we just held on tight enough. But eventually, we had to let go. We had to get on our separate planes and start our separate adventures. But here's the thing about our story. It didn't end when we went to different colleges. It didn't end when things got hard or complicated or messy. It kept going because we kept choosing each other, kept choosing us, even when it would have been easier to choose something else. Long distance was exactly as hard as I thought it would be. There were missed calls and time zone issues and lonely nights when I wished I could just drive over to one of their houses. There were moments when I wondered if we were crazy for even trying. But there were also surprise care packages and video calls that lasted until 3 in the morning and plane tickets bought on impulse for long weekends together. There were group chats full of memes and inside jokes and I miss yous. There were the small ways we stayed connected even across the distance. And slowly, we figured out how to make it work. Not perfectly, because nothing about us had ever been perfect. But we made it work in our own messy, beautiful way. I'm not going to tell you we're still together now, because that's not the point of this story. The point is that we tried. We took a chance on something unconventional and scary, and we gave it everything we had. The point is that love doesn't always look the way you expect it to. Sometimes it's 2 people. Sometimes it's 3. Sometimes it's none. And that's okay. The point is that the girl who was terrified of getting hurt, who investigated her secret admirers like they were suspects in a crime, learned how to be brave. Learned how to take risks. Learned that sometimes the scariest thing you can do is let yourself be vulnerable and hope that it works out. And whether it worked out forever or just for a while, it was worth it. Every messy, complicated, beautiful moment of it was worth it. So if you're reading this, if you found my old advice blog posts and followed the trail of breadcrumbs to this story, I guess my final piece of advice is this. Take the chance. Be brave. Let yourself fall, even if you're not sure where you'll land. Because sometimes the landing is softer than you think. Sometimes you find people who will catch you. Sometimes you build something beautiful out of the mess. And sometimes, just sometimes, the love letter with the blue fingerprint and the beautiful handwriting leads you exactly where you need to go. If this story meant something to you, hit that like button and subscribe because love in all its forms deserves to be celebrated. Drop a comment telling me about your own messy, beautiful love story. I promise I'll read every single one.